Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 1980 drama My Bodyguard. Now, this is a film that I have heard about. I have known about this film for a long time. I remember seeing this film featured in Out of the 80s, I think 3D, uh, and on VH1, and it's definitely been referenced in pop culture. It's a film, though, that I didn't get around to seeing until recently, and to be honest, I thought it was pretty disappointing. After it was over, I was kind of like, "This is it. That was it." It really wasn't much for me personally. I mean, I'll probably get a lot of flack for this, but I thought it was a little bit overrated. I thought it was pretty boring for the most part. I thought it had some pretty miserable pacing. The movie doesn't really have the bodyguard aspects show up until like the 40-50 minute mark or something. Adam Baldwin doesn't even show up into the film until 30 minutes into the movie. And this is a film that's an hour and 30 some minutes, but it dragged. It felt much longer than that for me personally. Part of that might have to do with Tony Bell's direction. No, I mean, no offense to the guy. I just, maybe he wasn't the right choice for this type of film, or it's just there wasn't really any energy with this direction. It was just pretty lifeless and flat. The score by Dave Grusin was pretty gruesome. It sounded like an after-school special. There was nothing about the score that was memorable. It was disappointing because I know he can do better. He did the score for the Goonies. This wasn't very magical. It was just a really dull and lame score. The cinematography by Michael D. Margulies wasn't much in either. The editing, I guess, was fine by Stu Linder, but nothing amazing or great. The screenplay by Alan Ormsby, I thought, while it did do a good job showing what it's like to be bullied and so on, it wasn't really, I don't know, it just, there wasn't really a lot to it. I especially think it was a bit too dramatic at points, kind of a bummer, and injected a bit too much realism in this type of film. I mean, you look at the poster, you're not expecting stuff like, oh, Adam Baldwin killed his younger brother. You're not expecting that kind of shit. That's like, holy shit, wow, that's a bit much. But at the same time, I kind of do applaud the film for doing that. I just wish the film was more consistent. It feels like it's just some high school bully movie, and then you have this really serious stuff, and I don't know. It just kind of just there's kind of a clash. There's a clash that goes on with in terms of tone. Now, the film stars Adam Baldwin as Ricky Linderman. I believe it was one of his first films. It might have been his acting debut. Uh, Chris Makepeace from Meatballs as Clifford Peach. Matt Dillon in one of his earliest roles as Melvin Moody, the school bully. Martin Mull as Ricky Clifford, not Ricky Clifford's father. Ruth Gordon plays Grandma. I don't know. The performance is fine. I just didn't care for the character. That was annoying. She was drunk all the time, and I guess that was the whole appeal to her character. It just wasn't appealing to me at all. Joan Cusack in her feature film debut as Shelley. You had some guy named Hank Salas who played Mike, who's this big bald motherfucker who becomes Matt Dillon's character Melvin's bodyguard. Uh, Jennifer Beals also has an uncredited cameo as Clifford's friend. George Wendt is in this for like a blink you to miss it scene where he plays an engineer. And so, yeah, I mean, the cast is pretty solid. That's definitely one of the things that I liked about the film. Yes, it was disappointing because ultimately I thought it was pretty forgettable, except for a few things here and there, and wasn't a movie I really had any desire to watch again. But there were some good performances. I mean, Adam Baldwin was great. Chris Makepeace did a good job. Matt Dillon played a great asshole. It just didn't seem like there was enough of a story there or enough going on, and the dynamic between the relationship between Chris Makepeace and Adam Baldwin was nice, but they didn't really start building it until like 40, 50 minutes into the movie. And then it had the typical sort of, oh, they got to break apart for whatever reason and they reunite. So it just felt pretty sudden, their friendship, and it just felt kind of brief. And then I think they could have definitely done a much better job with that aspect of the film. So the movie, you have Clifford Peach. He lives in some Chicago luxury hotel with his father, who's the manager, and his eccentric and drunk but loving grandmother, uh, played by Ruth Gordon. Clifford spends his nights with the family relaxing on the rooftop patio and spying on the neighbors through a telescope, which is really creepy. Really, really creepy. That's one thing about the writing I did not care for. I don't see why that's supposed to be funny, let alone be in the film, where father and son have a bonding moment while basically perving out on some chick who's undressing in next door and they're looking at her with a telescope. I'm like, really? That's Hey, father and son bonding moment. And father's like, you're too young for this. And then Clifford's like, no, I'm 15. And I'm like, what? What is going on here? This is so awkward. It just, skeevy. Skeevy. And I understand you had that kind of thing going on in the Monster Squad, but but that wasn't intent. They were taking pictures with the camera. I think Frankenstein was just taking random pictures of the camera, and he happened to take a picture of one of the girls without her shirt on, with just her bra on or whatever. He happened to do that. They are literally they're being voyeurs, literally being pervs. So anyway, Clifford becomes the target of abuse of a bully, played by Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon, named Melvin. I can see why he's bullying people, because his name is Melvin. Uh, only other popular character, and probably infamous character I can think of, who really wasn't that popular, is Melvin the Joker. Melvin, the brother of the Joker character, that was such a disaster that the Nostalgia Critic tried to create and failed miserably with. But anyway, Melvin Moody, he's moody, and he has his gangs of thugs. Dubrow, played by Richard Bradley. Koontz, played by Tim Reyna. And Hightower, played by Dean R. Miller. They regularly terrorize and extort lunch money from the other students, allegedly to protect them from a school outcast. Ricky Linderman, played by Adam Baldwin. According to school legend, Ricky has killed several people, including his own little brother, and so that's why people are afraid of him and decide to stay away from him and all of that. There's a teacher, played by Catherine Grody, who tells Clifford that only violence that she's aware of in Ricky's past occurred when his younger brother died accidentally while playing with a gun. I mean, really, when you look at the cover poster for this, with the tagline, terrorizing the toilets, chased after school, shaken down for lunch money, get a bodyguard. And you got this light yellow background, and it's just, and then you have this drama just shoved into your face. It's not what you expect. If you saw the trailer, if you see the poster, you go see this film, you're not expecting this drama, this really heavy stuff where it's Adam Baldwin shot his younger brother. And they really focus on that quite a bit in this film. So Clifford eventually, he works up the nerve to approach Ricky and asks him to be his bodyguard. First, Ricky refuses, but the boys become friends after Ricky saves Clifford from a beating by Moody and his gang. Because Clifford actually stands up for himself, corners the gang over at some malt shop or diner, and sprays them all with condiments, runs away, and then Ricky is there to save the day. And so they end as Clifford, Ricky, and a few friends. So anyway, then you have this whole sort of thing where they start to bond. They bond because Clifford actually follows him home, and he realizes that Ricky has emotional issues over the death of his 9-year-old brother a year before, and he's very slow to break out of his shell, but he's rebuilding a motorcycle that he really likes. And so they start to build a friendship. And I like this scene where they go around and they're trying to find the missing part that Ricky's been searching for, a hard to find cylinder for the motorcycle's engine, and they go search the junkyards to find it. And, and then that was a good scene, and that really showed the bond between the two. And then Clifford, Ricky, and a few friends from school, including fellow victims Carson, played by Paul Quandt, Shelley, played by Joan Cusack, and a unnamed girl, played by Jennifer Beals. They eat lunch in Lincoln Park. Now, and of course, before this as well, there was a scene where Ricky and Clifford, they had this sort of kind of a way. Adam Baldwin gets cleaned up a little bit. He's wearing a nice looking shirt and goes over to the motel, the luxury hotel, to see what's going on. And that's another aspect of this film I didn't like. I did not like the hotel stuff. The stuff with Martin Mull and the stuff with Ruth Gordon, it was just awful. It was lame. It wasn't funny. It felt out of place. So that really did not help the pacing either, because it would go back and forth from the stuff with Clifford and Ricky in the high school, and then go back to the hotel, and I don't give a shit. It was just lame. It was really lame. And so they're eating lunch later after the hotel shenanigans, and Moody and his gang approach them. Moody's enlisted the help of an older bodybuilder named Mike, played by Hank Salas, and announces that he is his bodyguard. And Mike abuses Ricky, fucks up his motorcycle, and Moody pushes his motorcycle into the lagoon. And then Ricky runs away. He doesn't fight back. He later comes to Clifford and asks for money to pay for pulling the motorcycle out of the lagoon, maybe. But feeling used, Clifford follows him. The two argue that before Ricky reveals to Clifford that he accidentally shot his brother while babysitting him home. His brother didn't shoot himself. He killed him. And it's good acting by Adam Baldwin there. But I mean, it's just like this gut punch of just really gritty realism that is juxtaposed with these hotel shenanigans with drunk grandma and Martin Mull and the school bully, and then it's just the high school drama, and then shotgun death. It's just really, I don't know. I don't know if it was the best choice by the writer Alan Ormsby to have that approach, especially focus so much on it. I get why he does that, but it just, I don't know, it just feels a little bit out of place with the tone that this film has for the most part. For the majority of the film, it doesn't really have this super serious tone, and then you have this stuff, and it just kind of takes you out of the film. He's overwhelmed with guilt and remorse for that. And Moody and Mike, they return to the park to continue bullying the other kids. Ricky is there getting his motorcycle out of the lagoon. Moody notices, demands the motorcycle for himself. Ricky refuses. Moody summons Mike, and the two begin to fight. I like the fights I liked in this film. I mean, they were brutal. The punches and things like that, it definitely did look like they hurt. They look like the type of fight that they would be. There's not a lot of choreography, but it's a brawl. They had some brawls. So there's a nice little brawl between Mike and Ricky. Ricky kicks Mike's ass in a crowd-pleasing moment. And he also urges Clifford to fight Moody. And while Ricky coaches him up. And so Clifford, of course, at first fights like a total wimp. And he just getting his ass kicked. But eventually he gets pissed off and he follows Ricky's advice where he says, hit him in the nose, punch him in the nose. And he finally lands a solid punch, knocks Moody down, and he ends up breaking his nose. And you have the bully just going around, oh, my nose, it broke my nose. And then you have a fun line of dialogue where that's another thing. There's really not very many memorable lines of dialogue in this either. It's not like some fun one-liners or fun stuff. There's like one line where the whole thing where you broke my nose, and then Ricky's all like, "That's okay. I think it looks better that way." So that was funny. But there aren't a lot of those lines in this. Probably the best lines went to Carson, played by Paul Quandt. I liked him. Actually, he was a little bit more likable. Actually, he was a little bit better than Chris Makepeace was. Like, he definitely had more personality, that's for sure. I enjoyed the scenes with Paul Quandt as Carson. And he was this no-nonsense kid. It was fun to watch. I wish he had more scenes. So, Moody gets his nose broken, cries like a bitch. Ricky gets his motorcycle back, and the kids leave together, and then Clifford jokingly asks, and then of course you have this whole sort of funny thing where Ricky jokingly asks Clifford to be his bodyguard. So that was kind of fun too. And he quotes the same line of dialogue that Clifford quoted, that he said to Ricky when he wanted him to be his bodyguard. So, I mean, but yeah, that's My Bodyguard. It's not really that much. I know it was a huge hit. It cost $3 million and it made $22.5 million in the box office. In 1980, that's a lot of money. So it's a pretty big hit. And it's definitely well known by a lot of people. And I know there's a lot of people who consider it to be a classic. I guess maybe it's because I didn't grow up with the film, or I didn't really relate to Clifford, or I was bullied, but I wasn't bullied like this. It was more verbally, if I remember correctly. It still sucked, but it was more verbal stuff. Like the typical sort of like, oh, four eyes, and they like to call me Brownie because my last name was Brown. And looking back at it, I'm like, that is so stupid. That is so lame. That's the best that they could do, or they throw stuff at me or whatever. But eventually, when I got older in high school, I eventually just reached my breaking point, and I just started talking back. I just started basically saying, I'm not going to take this shit anymore, and they stopped. So, that was nice. I didn't get any fights. It was never anything like that. I didn't have to give the bullies my lunch money. That never happened. So I guess I wasn't terrorized in the toilets. So so I guess I can't really relate to it in that aspect. But there was I like the idea of having a kid trying to hire another kid in the school to be his bodyguard, and they become friends, and some nice little fights here and there, and so on. But I don't know. I just it felt really flat for me. A lot of things didn't land. And then the hotel shit was immaterial, and I didn't care for it all. Except it was fun to see that apparently Martin Mull's character, he was, I don't know, maybe had some dealings with Lucasfilm because he had a model of the X-Wing that Chris Makepeace's character was playing around with earlier in the film. And then he has some Star Wars posters in his room. So that was kind of fun. But the movie itself wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun movie. And I think that's the problem the film had. It was not a fun film. It just wasn't an entertaining movie. It wasn't fun. The direction was pretty flat. The writing wasn't snappy. It wasn't witty. There's some good performances by Adam Baldwin and Chris Makepeace and a few others, and Matt Dillon, but it just wasn't. I just thought it wasn't really that much. I was disappointed considering its reputation as a classic 80s movie. I mean, it was actually voted, I think, as like one of the best high school films ever. Yeah, it was ranked number 45 on Entertainment Weekly's 50 best high school movies. It has an 85% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It gets, I think, like a 7 point something rating on IMDb, 7.1 out of 10. And I just don't think it's that great of a film. But that's just my personal opinion. Hey, if you love it, cool. That's awesome. I guess I just wasn't a big fan of it. So I don't know what else to say about My Bodyguard, except if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars, I'd probably give it two, 2 out of 5. I know it seems harsh. It's just it's not the type of film that pissed me off. It's not a rant, but it's disappointing. It's a kind of that's the type of two that's your typical two out of 5 star flick for me. It's disappointing. There's not enough there for it to be a time waster for me to watch it as a time waster because I found it to be pretty boring for the most part. So there's not enough there, and there's things that I respected and I liked about it, but not enough to really make it worth my while. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. That's my viewpoint. That's my opinion on My Bodyguard. And as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.